G'day everyone, it's Doc Joe here from Storyweaver Games, and today we're going to make some spaceships, but not any normal spaceships. We're going to make spaceships that can be broken up and printed out as 8-inch tiles. Now to do this, you're going to need to download a little bit of a toolkit which I've made for you and get that over at the Storyweaver website, storyweaver.com. Just follow the menus to get to the master mapping program and log in, and you should be able to get it from there. Anyway, you can see that we've got this here spaceship already mapped out. And you can see it's got a weird grid over the top of it. That grid is what enables us to create 8-inch tiles, each inch being equivalent of a 5-foot step or a 1.5 meter step on your map. We're going to use feet for this. And then you basically just use all the available mapping tools that you have in your campaign cartographer, in particular Cosmographer. Yes, I would strongly recommend Cosmographer. Also, you'll note that while I'm working through this tutorial, I'll be using some custom textures and fills. That's okay. You can download some tiles from the website as well and add those to your toolbox. But basically, the techniques we're going to explore today is how to structure your maps in such a way so that you can then render them out automatically as tiles suitable for printing and then using on the table. But most importantly, these tiles will be interchangeable. So you can mix and match and make up new spaceships as you go. Now, let's get right onto it. So what we're going to do is we're going to open a Starship map tool template. Now, what I'll get you to do is download this from our website, and then you just simply open it up like so. Open. And there you go. Now, this grid area should be more than enough, but let's actually zoom down into these grids and actually understand what they are. Each of these grid elements here represents an 8-inch tile, or a 40 by 40 foot or 12 meter by 12 meter section of your starship. And each of these have actually been made as a symbol. I'll just grab this and you should be able to see. You can move it along. I'll just refresh that. I've created this as a symbol so that you can copy these and create much larger work areas if you so wish, without exploding your memory of your design. So basically every one of these is identical. I'm just going to move that back in place. And what I'm also going to do is click on the layers, and I'm going to make sure that our guides base, which is where all of these symbols sit, is both fixed, so I can't move it around anymore, and also, actually, we'll just leave it on fixed for the moment. There we go. Now, let's take a look at what this represents. If this is 40 foot by 40 foot, or an 8 by 8 inch tile, we have 8 5-foot squares along each piece of this. And these lines here represent the possible connecting doorways. So if we were to always connect from a center 5-foot or 1-inch grid here, then every tile that we make that connects to that will in fact connect to another tile and can be rotated. We've also got offset doors, which can also be used as standard measures for walls. So if you want a tile that ends close to the edge, you would probably align the wall along here so that it would connect with other walls. It's pretty simple really when you think about it. And they are color coded for easy reference as you're designing it. So that's the first thing. That's the grid matrix setup. So when you open this for the first time, you'll be able to start working on it. I would recommend strongly that after opening it, the first thing you do is you give your project a name by going Save As, and let's call this one, we're going to make a starship for a new game I'm working on. It's a Pando Trader, and we will call it Heroes of Yore. Now that we've got that all set up and our work area is all ready to go, we'll start laying out the spaceship. And this is where we have some more fun and another file for you to download. Okay, so normally when you start designing a spaceship, you would draw out the hull on here, and that would require you to use various drawing tools to map out an area, the outer shape of the ship for each of the decks. And that can be very time consuming. So I've created a symbol library for you, and you can download that. Again, it's on the same location on the master mapping site on storyweaver.com. Just go and grab it. I'll just go and open it now. You use this button to open it. You then need to find out where it's been stored. I typically store it in my Dropbox, MySpace, ship construction set. There it is. Open that. And I'm going to be adding shapes to this over time as well. So and please, if you create new symbol sets and expand on this, share the love. I should do a tutorial on how to create symbol sets. Anyway, this symbol library has been categorized by various broad types of shape. So you've got sidebars, body bars, endpoints, armaments, bridges, and so forth. We'll start with a bridge. So I'm going to open up this and see what sort of bridges we've got. I think I might go for this sort of arrowhead bridge there, and I'm going to rotate this. I'm going to make sure that I have got my scale set to 1, because I have made sure that as I've been building these, that they're all designed to fit within these symbols, sorry, within these image tiles. Now, you see the double blue line there? That means that that is where the door would be. So if I put it so that this hallway section here that you see is smack on the end of that tile there, this section, these 1, 2, 3 sections, will now be compatible with any other tiles that you make. And you just drop it down. Now I'm going to grab a body section. Let's see what we've got in the way of body sections. This one looks like a relatively good body section, but it's a bit small for what I want. Even though it does fit neatly amongst these, I'm going to double the size of it by going 2. And I will keep it in the center there. Again, we're locking to that center point. Bingo. Now, if I zoom out a little bit, you can now already see I've got a pretty good looking starship already. We're going to leave it at no, actually, I might move it forward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my 2 shapes that have dropped down, this one and this one. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to drag them forward to that point there. And then I'm going to put an engine block on the end of it. There you go, engines. And I will just drop that one, making sure, again, that it's all aligned like so. So there's the top deck of our ship. Let's now go and put other decks underneath it. I would like underneath this there to be pretty much an identical carrier bay inside here. This is a trading vessel, so it's probably quite thick around the middle. So I'm just going to duplicate this and bring it down. I'll actually take it down to 1 more here so it's nice and clear. I'm also going to change the front section a little. I think what I'll do, and I'll turn this back to regular size. I think I'll make that a slightly thicker spacing deck, but setting it back in, that's not quite right. Yeah, that looks good. There we go. So there's the lower deck area, and we can probably use that as an airlock underneath. So this piece sits underneath the main deck there. And finally, let's add a 3rd deck. This is going to be quite a large ship, actually. We'll add a 3rd deck. So that's got 2 decks of the ship. I'm now going to get the last deck of the ship, the under section. And for that, I'm just going to have this one connect in here. And again, always working from the middle point if you can. There we go. Excellent. Okay, so there's the sub deck. And we'll put an airlock at the end of it as well. Just making sure that that's going to sit nicely. Yes. Excellent. Okay. Now, the reason I moved that there is so that that little door would fit along those lines there if we ever need to line that up later on. So, bingo. We've now laid out a very large, actually huge trading vessel, 3 decks in almost no time at all. Rightio, now that you've got your base deck laid down, it's time to put on the floors. I'm going to, or the decks, so I'm just going to zoom in and we'll do one at a time. Now, I'm not going to do all of this for you on the video. I'm just going to do one deck so that you get an idea on how to put all of this together. So we'll start by clicking on this button here, All Deck Plan Tools. We're going to want to do some fill, and since this is a trading vessel, I want something, mind you, it is a Pando trading vessel, so it's going to be probably pretty high tech. I'm going to go for a chrome floor space for the majority of the ship. And I'm going to use this one here, which when you've got the red line underneath it, it means that that will automatically mirror as you're drawing it, which will save us a bucket load of time. So we're going to take this 8-inch tile here as our starting point, and we'll go to the middle of the tile. We'll draw up, out, up. And as you can see, it's actually mirroring as we do this. Now I'm going to bring it into here to the edge of this tile. So now we've got this, and you can see it's going to align at the top and the end of these tiles, which gives us a lot of flexibility in how we use these tiles in future. Let's now go and put some walls into that. I'm just going to save it now. It's always a good idea to save. And what I'll do is I will go back to my tools, and I'm going to scroll up, and I'm going to select a bulkhead. I typically go for very simple bulkheads. Let's just go for the hull 5. And now these do not mirror. So I'm going to zoom in even a little bit further, and we'll start. Let's start at the edge of that door there, the green area. Oh, now I've still got ortho set on. And I'm going to run my wall along here. Messed that one up. I'll show you how to move that one in a second. Snap is your friend. And all the way to that last green point. So there you go. Now, I'm just going to turn on our, there you go. Let's take a look at what that looks like. Yeah, pretty good. Now, you can see I made a mistake on the wall point there where I should have dropped it. To move that, you can use this tool here, the node edit. Just click up near there and snap it back, and right click, and you're done. Okay, so here's the basis of our ship. Now, I would like a corridor. Will we have a corridor running through this? This is meant to be a very large open vessel. Yes, I think we will, because these guys are generally carrying high cost materials. So again, we'll grab, say, hull 5. Now, the door is here on that blue line. So we'll go to the red line on the outside of it, and we're just going to draw all the way down to the end of that corridor. The red line that I clicked, I think I went to the wrong line. Let me just zoom out a little bit there. I want to go for the red line. Zoom in, make sure I click on the right spot. So I will do this again. I'll grab this. I'll go to the red line, all the way down to the red line. Done. And we can do the red line, all the way down to the red line. Done. Now that means that if we have other doors, which we will have, and other walls, they will always connect to those lines there. So that's absolutely perfect for us. Do we want to have some doors along this corridor? Well, I would say yes. I think we might want to partition this off. Where would the logical place be to put the partition? Along the edge of our guideline. So we could put a wall here, and we'll insert a door there later. And likewise, we'll do the same, say, not every step, just every couple of steps. Oops, that one was not quite right. Let's do that one again. Make sure they're in the right spot. Excellent. So now we have our emerging trading interior vessel. We should probably put some brakes in here as well, but let's get a bit funky with this. Let's actually have one of these offset from the wall down through here. Now, the reason I'm doing that is more to show you what's possible, because this line we could have running from the wall. So you can see when you print off this tile, you'll have a wall that's slightly inset, leaves something behind the wall, whereas this one, the wall would be correctly placed. Now, that's probably a really dumb thing to do because it's going to make the tile look weird. So I'm just going to delete that line, but I'm going to do something a little bit different. I do want to mess with this a little bit. So let's start with the wall, come in, say, to the, remember this is our tile space through here. So we've already got an interesting pattern. I'm going to come down to the green mark, I'm going to come in at an angle to the red mark and then down. Now that means that we have an interesting effect inside a tile, which is matched by an interesting effect on another tile. If you're going to break the rule of where the tiles cut, make it interesting at least, and then bring it to the lines of where the tiles would be cross-connecting to some degree. You know, we know that that's an area where the walls sometimes can reconnect. So there you go. Now, we could do the same thing. Let's just mimic that for here, and we can use these lines to keep us all aligned. And I'll just draw another line down through there as well. Boop, done. Okay, so there's part of our starship. What we might do is also break off. I want to make sure that we are connected. So that's going to look like an L shape, and that's going to look like a strange shape. Yeah, I think we're fine. I think that's good enough for this, given that it is meant to be a very large cargo area. Okay, let's save our work. Always save your work. There we go. I do have auto save turned on, but I like to do it manually as well. Now, I'm not going to bore you. I'm going to go and flesh out the rest of this, but the key thing here is I'm going to be using these blue doorways as much as possible for the interconnections between my ship sections, and the green lines to help me guide the walls, or placing the walls as much as possible along the sides of the tiles themselves. So let's work on that just for the next piece. I'm going to keep recording this, but I'm going to go really, really fast, so you won't hear me talking, or if you do, it'll be as a chipmunk. Okay, so we've got the top deck laid out very, very broadly. Obviously no detail there, which you can put in with all of your various other symbol sets, but you get the idea. This front section here is going to be interesting because almost by definition, the rooms are very hard in a shape like this to make sure they all connect. But we have been able to achieve a fair amount of consistency across these couple of tiles. These tiles here, however, are very consistent, and you'd be able to use them for many, many different purposes. I've just noticed that some of my walls seem to have broken. Oh no, it's just zooming out. So, and I'm going to put an extra wall in there. There we go. I'm missing a bit of wall. Straight down. Done. Yeah, that's better. So, that's that part of the tutorial. I would let you now experiment using both the grid template which I've set up, but also the symbol set that I've set up. Now the next thing is to place a grid line on your map. Now I don't mean the grid line, I don't mean this guideline, I refer to this as the guideline, I mean an actual grid line that you'll use on your battle maps when you're printing them out. Now there's a couple of ways that you can do this. I'm going to turn off this area here, off this layer. So I'm going to go to layer and I'm going to hide the base grids. There we go. The first way that you could do put a grid onto this is to, first of all, let's go and select the color black. Let's make sure we are on our grid and we are on our hex and square grids. And what you could use, you can use the drawing, this grid command here. I'm just going to zoom out a bit. Let's do that. So click on the grid tool. We're going to set up a square grid. We're going to make the grid spacing 5 foot. We are not going to label this. So I'm going to turn the labels off. I'm going to turn this off. I'm also going to turn this off. In fact, turn it all off. There we go. Now the reason why you want to turn the labeling off is otherwise you'll get labels all over your map that you don't need. If you do need them, great, use it. I don't. You do want to turn the grid snap off because you do not want to move away from the current type of grid snap that you have set down here. So let's now make sure that's 5 foot, make sure it's square, and then click apply. And then you could just draw a grid over your entire map. Bingo. Now that's okay. I mean, it'll work. Yeah, you got the grids on there, but it's not particularly attractive because the grid just sits over pretty much everything. And it's, you know, I just don't think that it looks that cool. So I'm going to undo that, Control Z. There's another way that you can do this. And what I've done is, and I'll have to show you how to set this up yourself. So what I've done is I've created a new way of making a grid, and it's really, really simple. I'm going to go to the fill styles. Let's bring that back over here. I'm going to go scalable hatching. And I've actually created a new by pressing the new button. I'll do this new, and we're going to call this 5-foot grid. And let's just call it new. I've got one in there already, but I want to show you how to do this for yourself. You just call this 5-foot grid. Click on OK. You've got 4 sets of parameters that you can create when creating a new fill style. We're only going to use set 1 and 2. So the first set is set the angle to 0 and the spacing to 5. Pretty obvious. Offset, both offsets should be 0. And then you switch the angle to 90 degrees and you make the spacing 5. And guess what that's going to give you? A 5 by 5 grid. You can check what that looks like by checking the sample size of 25. Also make sure that your set 3 and set 4 have all zeros in them, otherwise they will show. Once you've done that, you click on New. Now what this does is it gives you a great little drawing of a fill tool. So if I was to now draw, I'm going to draw a circle here, just to show you, you can see that it now, pardon me, it fills it with a grid, which is pretty much what you want. Okay, I'll save now. Now, armed with that tool, you can then come over here, right-click on this, go to Advanced, and you can actually set yourself up with a new specialized fill that will work every single time. I do have it somewhere in here. It is a grid, 5-foot deck overlay 5-foot grid. Now, to set this up, you would find any one of the deck overlays that you've already got. You would go New, and I'm going to call this New so that you can see what I'm doing. New. You would make sure that the outline is no outline. You'd make sure that it's a closed shape. Path polygon, all good. Restricted map border, yep. And then you go to Properties. This is where the magic happens. You want to make sure that you click on this and you select it as black. You want to make sure that the width is 0 because you do not want this to be a line. You want this to be a filled in area. Also, in the template which I will be sharing with you, I have a layer called Table Grid Lines. Set that here. And likewise, I've got a sheet called Table Grid Lines. Type that in there. That will mean that when you draw this with this grid tool, it will always go on the right layer, the right sheet. And then you do the fill style, a 5-foot grid that you have set up, and you click on OK. You click on OK, save the settings. Yep, you now have this amazing little tool, and watch what happens. I can just draw over this back area here. I'll just scan down a bit. Doop, doop. There we go. And it puts the grid lines in perfectly. Now, the grid lines there are a little bit soft, so what you might want to do is adjust them. I'll come to here. I will just adjust this transparency. Actually, I'll turn off the transparency. There you go. Now you can see that they're a little bit harsher. Oops, I've made an error in there with how that's been put down, so I'm going to use this to nudge. That's better. And if we zoom down nicely now, that looks fantastic. So that's how you can put beautiful grid lines onto your map with basically 0 fuss. Set up that tool and then just reuse it over and over and over again. Perhaps the good folks at Pro Fantasy will bundle all of this up for you as an annual, but for the moment, that's just how it's going to work. One more thing, I actually don't like the way the grid line is sitting above the walls, so I'm just going to move this down, rather moving it up. So I'll move it up. There we go. Yeah, and refresh. Rightio, now that we've got our ship design in full swing, we could add some components to it, some funky stuff to make it look good. Let's put in the engineering area in here. I'm going to go to engineering. Let's see what we got. We got nothing. There we go. My computer's just being a bit slow. I'm going to put in a drive block in here. We might put in a nice big warp core of some sort. There we go. And I'm going to double the size of that because I can. Now we've got all of our stuff laid out. We don't really need to worry about where things fit because the wall's guiding us now. So we're pretty good. We're pretty good. I'm going to put a couple of engines on the end of that. There we go. Lock that one there. Lock that one there. Lock that one there. Yeah, that'll be fine. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but you get the idea. You can flesh all of this out. That's mapping that you know how to do. However, now we're going to talk about how do you export this, and this is where the real magic happens. If you were to try and export this as 8-inch tiles, printable tiles, you would first of all have to figure out how to break it up into those tiles. So let's turn our grid lines back on again, or our guidelines back on again. Go back to the guides, turn them on, unhide them like so. What you would be doing is you would be basically selectively outputting each of these pieces one at a time. And that's going to be a right pain. I've written a little macro that will help you through this. Now you'll find this macro, again, it's a downloadable. I will just go and grab it. Too many drives. C drive, program data. Where is it? Come on back to me. There you go, Pro Fantasy, CC+. And I've called it JS2 macros. I'll also put these macros up on the website so you can take a look at them. But if you take a look at this macro, you'll see that it contains a number of useful little scripts. The one that we are most interested in is this one here, macro 8-inch tile. And this macro is where all the magic's going to happen. If you're using feet for your starships, then the column scale, you'll want to set that to 40 in the macro. If you're using meters, set it to 12. So let's close that down. To run the macro, what you need to do is you need to go, first of all, you need to download it and put it in that folder which I've just shown you. Now, before we can output and run that macro, we need to do one thing. We actually need to make sure that our output options for PNG files are all set correctly. And to do that, we'll output one tile just as a bit of a test. So what we'll do is we will go File, Save As, and then what we will do is we'll select rectangular section PNG. You could make it a JPEG if you so wish, but that would, this will be fine. We'll put it into a folder that actually is going to work. Let's put this into just a folder called test for the moment. Click here on options. This is what's important. Now the options will depend, what you set for these options will depend very much on the print resolution that you want for your starship. If you want 300 dots per inch, you're going to be looking at 2400 pixels at 300 resolution. Now there are different versions of Campaign Cartographer out there. This is the latest and this is the interface for the latest. You might not have resolution and pixel per inch information in there. Don't worry about it. If you do have it, set it at 300 if you're going for that high resolution. If you're not going for that high resolution, don't. I'm going to leave that here. For the sake of this demo, I will set this at 2400 and I will set this at 2400, which is what I would have if I was readying this for use with a printed document. I normally use about 1% anti-alias. That's up to you. Crop the aspect ratios, definitely do that. JPEG quality at 100, but this is what you want to make sure you've got right. This stuff here. Push OK. And then you would select Save. And let's just check this engine area here. It's going to go and render it out. Now what we've done by doing this is we have told Campaign Cartographer what are the settings for each square tile it's going to output when you run that macro. There is no way of setting this stuff inside the macro, so we have to set it explicitly externally first. As you can see, it can take a long time to output this size of resolution. These are pretty detailed bitmaps that we've got going through here as well. So at this point, we would now run our macro. And then what you do is you type in load macro. And then you make sure that you're in the right folder and you scroll down and you find the JS2 Mac and you open. And it's asking us to save now. Now, once you've done that, you're pretty much getting ready to go. The next thing that we're going to want to do is go to our grid, and I'm going to actually edit it so that we are only dealing with 40-foot increments. So everything is going to line up just so. Okay, and if I turn off our grid lines, because we don't want them to be rendered, you can see that we're snapping correctly. I'm going to start in this column, and I'm not going to render out the whole ship. I'm just going to render out parts of it so you can see what this is all about. Now, we've got the macro file loaded in. We've got our grid lines turned off. We now want to run the macro. And the macro, if you recall from our little document there, was 8-inch tiles. Very, very complex macro name. What is the name of the ship? We'll call this test ship. Okay, and we'll start it at this point here, because there's no really point of having this engine block here. People are never going to actually put their minis on it. So there we go. We'll start it there. The number of columns, we'll say we'll only do, what you'd do is you'd normally count how many columns across the ship would be. For this time, I'm only going to do 3. And the number of rows, I'm only going to do 3. So I'm just going to do a small subset. Now, what it's doing now is it's running off and it's running the macro, and it is going and grabbing all of those rendering elements, and it is outputting them. Now, I'm not going to bother you watching through the whole macro activity there. I'm just going to pause this and we'll come back shortly. Rightio, now that we've run that macro, let's go and take a look at the output. I've just gone to my C drive and the tiles. You can see I've got a couple of other tiles in there from a previous rendering, but here they are. You can see here, oops, I'll bring that up and over. I'll actually shrink it down. Oop, there we go. That is a square tile ready for you to output for your gaming table delight. And you can see that they will all network nicely together. And you can see here, hang on, just get to them, that I've done the same thing for this map as well. You can see that this would connect beautifully to my other maps as well. So easy to get lots of interchangeable mapping parts. And that's it. So there's all the basics of creating a set of deck plans. You map out your whole spaceship, but you map it out in such a way that the tiles can be reused and recombined. You can imagine here that we could take these two sections and place a section down in the middle of them to really broaden them out, or maybe even multiple sections through the middle of them. We could create some other sections that adjust this floor space. It becomes very, very easy. You also learn how to put a grid line over your maps very, very quickly and flexibly. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. If you've got any questions, please drop me a line. Sorry, I can't always respond immediately these days. I'm traveling a lot for business, but I do try. And do make sure you get online and download some of the tools which I've created for you. Have a lot of fun mapping with this. I'm looking forward to seeing your creations too. Cheers. Bye.